Welcome back to Eddie's LaunchPads.
Stand by for action.
This is your captain speaking. We've been cleared for departure.
Okay, Eddie, start the countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's go. Stand by for action.
This podcast is brought to you by Eddie Edster, the Dogsthorpe Infant School Wellbeing Dog.
Welcome back to Eddie's LaunchPads. It's the Dogsthorpe Infant School podcast for parents, teachers and schools. Thank you for joining us today, wherever you're listening in the world. It's lovely that you're joining us, and we hope that you find something useful from our episodes. Over 130 episodes now. Eddie's sitting here with me. He's looking very eager because he's not yet had his morning sausage. You know what he likes? He always likes his morning sausages, listeners, and he's not had it yet, and he's looking at me saying, hurry up, I want my sausages. So let's get on with the show. Now, it's always great to have great resources on the show, and we like having people who offer resources, not just for schools, but for people who are home teaching. It's always worthwhile. You can never, ever have too many resources when it comes to the education of our children, and we've got one for you today. Inspire. And to tell us all about it is Luke Whitehouse. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Morning, Dave. And more importantly, morning, Eddie.
Yeah, he's
morning,
down.
Eddie.
He's down here. He normally sits in his co-pilot seat, but for some reason he's sitting on the floor today. Luke, tell us all about Inspire Education.
It's broken into three parts, I suppose. You've got the main platform, which is, where the children access, where the teachers access. Then we work alongside. It's worth sharing this. We work alongside a company called Mosaic, and we've embedded all of the Mosaic platform and all of their stuff into Inspire as well. And then we also run virtual reality workshops, historic workshops, and we sell artifacts to schools. So it's a colossus resource. Really is. So it's a big one, but the main area is the online platforms.
And this is something for teachers to when they're planning their lessons. Is that how it works?
Yeah, well, it's twofold. So it really is. We focus really on literacy and history and geography, right? So that's kind of the Inspire area. And on this platform, you've got all the lesson plans, of course, you've got all the pedagogy that sits behind it. But I suppose the sparkle dust is that every area has its own interactive scene. So, for example, if you're in year 3 and you're teaching the Stone Age, it's really, really difficult to describe the Stone Age, particularly the different eras like Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic. I mean, even if you were asking a professional historian for them to articulate the intricate differences between these periods is really difficult. And yet they are huge. These are massive, massive periods of time, and so much happens. So what we have these interactive scenes, and they're like timelines, and they look like a game, right? But they kind of look real life. They're all 3D. And you can see an area, so you can see a landscape. And on that landscape, you're in the Paleolithic era, and it's all very cold. You can play the sounds, and you can see people doing their jobs in their little tents, right? And then you can click the timeline and then jump thousands of years into the future and go into the Mesolithic and the Neolithic period. And the topography changes on the scene. The houses change, the landscape changes, and you can see really continuity and change, how these amazing time periods change in time. And, I'm just picking on the Stone Age, but, let's take ancient Greece. This is a really long answer, sorry, but let's take ancient Greece. Ancient Greece, you've got a number of eras. You've got the Minoan period, you've got the Mycenaean period, you've got the Dark Ages, you've got the Classical period, you've got the Hellenistic period, the massive mammoth time period. what children need to know, they need to know the differences of how these civilizations changed in time. And so what inspired us in the Stone Age, in the ancient Grecian era, in the Roman era, it allows you to see how these periods change civilization. They're able to see the different architecture of the buildings. They're able to see the different clothing that was worn, the change in cuisine and diet, the change in culture, in art, and they're able to see this visually. And sitting all behind that are, hundreds and hundreds of lessons. We work very closely with members of the Historic Association. So some of your listeners may have heard of people called Mr. T, right? Stuart Tiffany. So he's a huge part of our work, and he helps considerably. Another guy called Glenn Carter, he's up in North. He runs the History Rocks Facebook channel, so it's well worth following him. And he helps us a lot as well. So we're very tight with those members of the Historic Association. So we work collaboratively with them. So hopefully that makes sense. That's the Inspire platform.
Yeah.
I haven't even got onto the Mosaic area yet, but that's the Inspire.
In regard to Mosaic that you mentioned, how does that dovetail in?
Oh, great question. So Mosaic are amazing. So what Mosaic do, they provide hundreds. And when I say we're probably over 1,000 now, so over 1,000 3D models, diagrams, cross sections, maps, environments, people, processes across all of your subjects, history, geography, and science, across all of your topics, volcanoes, rainforests, ancient Egypt. And what Mosaic do is it is quite phenomenal. So you can actually take a walk around ancient cities. So if you're looking at the Maya and you want to look at Chichen Itza, so you can go onto the Mosaic 3D environment and you can actually walk around Chichen Itza, and you have a voiceover and it will explain to you the various parts. You can look at a bird's eye view. You can go inside buildings. Like if you want to look at the pyramids of Giza, you can go actually inside, look at all the network of tunnels. You can take a walk around Tutankhamun's tomb. They have got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And again, everything's explained. You've got all the voiceovers. But what's really, really cool is, I'm picking on the history here. What's super effective is, say, if you're teaching the rainforest. Let's go to the water cycle, right? So the water cycle, which is a part of their science curriculum. Now, there's different processes happening simultaneously. And if you're looking at a linear video, for example, it's very difficult for the children to kind of process in a 5-minute video all the different intricate things that are happening. Because if they're looking at a 3D model, a 3D process, they're able to see everything a bit like a picture, I suppose. You see a picture of a water cycle with all the arrows. But what this does, it allows you to turn this environment around, see inside the crevices of where the water sinks in, go inside the earth, see visually the entirety of the water cycle. And that's just one. As I said, there are hundreds of them. So what we do is we embed the Mosaic software into the Inspire software. So if they're looking at, let's go back to the Stone Age and keep the focus. Not only do they have this visual timeline where they're able to see visually how the different eras change in time with all of these animations happening simultaneously, not only do the children have then a plethora of video footage to kind of access with all the quizzes and all the reading materials, but they then have, let's say 40, right? I don't know on the top of my head. Let's just say 40 3D models on the Stone Age to the Iron Age. So they can go and see how tools changed in time. And they can see what the Stone Age tools look like and how they compare to the Iron Age and the development that happened over that period of time. They can see, compare and contrast a Bronze Age settlement in Britain to that of a Bronze Age settlement in the Far East, in the Middle East, and they can see the different types of buildings and the different networks and the different types of architecture. So there are just multiple routes and multiple variables that the teacher really can then access for the children and just provide it's hard to articulate, but the resourcing, we work with Mosaic. Yeah, the resourcing is unbelievably powerful. It is unbelievably powerful, and the children can access this at home as well. And quite a lot of our, schools allow children to access it at home as well. And you find that actually they're just looking at it like 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. They should be in bed. They should be in bed, right?
Well,
But they're not. They're not. They're on Inspire. They're on a Mosaic, and there's a silver lining there, and it's just great to see. It really is.
yeah, well, it's great to know that there are resources like that for them to inspire them when they are looking at things at home, because it's very, very important. And of course, every day is a school day. We all know that. Even as us older adults, we know that we'll always carry on learning. You learn something new every day, and let's hope that, I'm sure, that the stuff that you and Mosaic provide will help our children to grow in their learning. Now, you mentioned also about artifacts.
Yes.
How does that dovetail in?
So when they're on a lesson, so they're looking at a lesson before they actually get into the platforms, there's a number of options these teachers can do. So, for example, if they're looking at a lesson plan, can access the reading materials, they can access some of the 3D stuff, they can go into the interactive scenes. And there's also an option, because it's really hard for teachers to have everything have everything in one area. So there's also an option for them to purchase artifacts for their topic, and it's all in one area. So they just click on the button, it takes them to the shop, and it will go directly to the area they want. So if they're in a Roman lesson, an ancient Roman lesson in Britain, click on the button, it goes right to the Roman shop, and they can buy little boxes of artifacts to have in their classroom. And all these artifacts are sourced from, really, really sound places. So Starbeck Education, who are, I think, nationally known as being one of the best artifacts sources. We work really closely with them, so all of our stuff comes from them. But the great thing is, if they're an Inspire or a Mosaic customer, they get like 10% off. And so we source all from Starbeck, so they get a big discount, and that that can go a long way, 10%.
Absolutely. And the great thing about actually holding, because we've got a lot of artifacts that we keep at school, and we store them, of course, in plastic boxes and then get them out for each lesson. And you can see the child's excitement of actually holding something, particularly when we do things like Victoriana and the world religions, and they can actually see and touch and hold the things that have been used over the centuries. It makes their learning come to life, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I think artifacts are brilliant. They're just brilliant and these ones are great because I think most of them are handmade. So for example, if they're buying a piece of pottery, that's been made by a professional potter who takes a fascination in history. So when they get these artifacts, they're not the real deal. They're not like taken from the British Museum, but in terms of the way they look, they are like pretty authentic. So the Stone Age stuff again is all very much focused on that archaic materials. And then if they're looking at things like the Vikings, that the artifacts are made out of resin. So I don't know if you're a historian, I haven't even asked you, but the Lewis chess pieces that were found in Scotland in the Isle of Lewis, they've got Norway heritage, amazing chess piece. And some of the most famous kind of Viking, Anglo-Saxon artifacts you can see. Well, in our Anglo-Saxon Viking artifact box, they've got little replicas of these little Lewis chess pieces. Now, the ones originally, I think they're made from tusk, seal. I think so. They're made as like ivory, right? So obviously we can't do that. But the materials they make, it looks like ivory. It's made out of a particular resin, and it looks really, really cool. And the children can handle these and get a good sense of what they look like.
And all of that is really, really important because particularly now that it's so expensive to take children on coaches now and on buses because of the transport costs and all of that. It's lovely to take them, but you can't go like we used to and you just get them on a bus and go, you know. I mean, like, we have to plan and budget for our lessons. And the great thing about what you're offering is experiential learning with them actually staying in the classroom.
Oh, absolutely. Like, yeah, I mean, to go to these places, I mean, historical sites, they're so far spread out in a way, particularly when you're looking actually at primary history, because primary history focuses on, very much part of the curriculum focuses on Britain and the development of Britain throughout prehistory into kind of the Vikings, and then you end in 1066. Right. So, you know, these sites are very, very spread out. It's very difficult for schools, particularly in isolated areas, to get to these areas. So we've got it all. You know, we've got these 3D areas. So, for example, I don't know, if they're looking at Creswell Crags, right? We've got an actual replica of Creswell Crags. One of, you know, another famous Stone Age site. We've got a 3D replication of it, and they can turn it around, have a look inside. Some of the famous villas, the Roman villas, that are spread out in the UK, very difficult to go to, and particularly with children as well. We've got the replicas, so the children can actually visually see these amazing British locations in history without the need of, you know, traveling. Let me make one thing clear. I really do I think going on trips is really important.
Oh yeah, so do I.
Yeah, you know, I like ideally it'd be better to actually go to these locations and see them on a screen. But like you said, we can't do that all the time, it's cherry picking really what would be the most suitable. So yeah, we've got it all visually for.
It's so important. I mean, yeah, you're right. The stuff where we're very lucky that we've got the Space Centre not that far away from us over in Leicester, so that's reachable for older children, not so much for infants, because we need so many toilet blocks when we're toilet stops when we're dealing with infants. But with older children, you know, that's doable, that's reachable, and we're very lucky where we are. But not all schools are like that, but that experiential learning, you know, when you mentioned about the Vikings, it took me back 50 years. My dad used to take me to a place, I'm a Kent boy, and my dad used to take me down to a place called Pegwell Bay down on the south coast. And at that time, it had absolutely huge hovercraft, which used to come across from France because there was no Eurostar in those days, and the ferries were very slow and laborious things. But these huge hovercraft used to take people over. I think it was about 30-minute flight across the channel in these huge hovercraft, and my dad took me all the way there. But he spent all of his time moaning because he had packed the car and we got this picnic going. I mean, but I explored the beach further along, and he had took me to see these wonderful hovercraft, these amazing craft, and I found an old Viking ship. And
no way.
Yeah, it was this Viking boat, and I thought, why have they got a Viking boat there? Well, it was because Hengist and Horsa landed there, apparently, and they landed there, and it was open to the elements, and we could actually touch it. I mean, now if you go down there, they've got a fence around it, and it's all been environmentally protected.
Of course,
and it's all there. And the sad thing is that the hovercraft finished, and the hovercraft port is just all disused and just left, and everybody moved out. I think it was in the late 80s, I think it closed. And so the thing that my dad took me to see that he thought would be really, really exciting and would fire my imagination, I didn't spend all my time watching the hovercraft. I was encapsulated by this Viking ship. You know,
I tell you what. How old were you, Dave? Don't want me asking.
Oh, I must have been.
I don't want to give it away.
I don't know. I must have been about 10 or 11. I guess. You know.
I tell you what. Go on. So no, go on.
So it just inspired me, and I came back. And I remember him saying to my mum as he was going home, I'm not going to swear because we're on a podcast, but he was. And he said, I took him all that way to see those amazing hovercraft, and all he keeps going on about is that blooming Viking ship. You know, I'm fed up with it. And at that time, you know, you could climb aboard it. I mean, you can't do it now, but it was like something that the council had put up. I'm guessing it was something the council had put up to mark where Hengist and Horsa had landed, and it was, everybody had ignored it. Whereas
it was an original Viking.
Well, I don't know if it was original. I don't know if it was original, or whether it was somebody had done it to mark it. You know, it may have been something that a historic society had put there. I don't know, but there was, apart from one very small information board that told you the story of Hengist and Horsa, I wouldn't have even known what it was. But it was just funny, you know. There's millions and millions of pounds worth of hovercraft flying in and out. I mean, they used to take cars on these hovercraft. It was absolutely huge. I'm sure if you go on YouTube, you can probably find the old film of the hoverport at Pegwell Bay. But just further along the beach, if people walked a little bit further along, whereas now I think it's like it's well protected, and people can still go and visit that Viking ship that at the time when I was there 60 odd years ago, it was amazing, isn't it? But I still remember it. It's the actual experience of thinking, oh, Vikings, you know, the ones with the horns on their head. You know, for a 10-year-old boy, it was exciting.
Yeah. I tell you what as well. You just proved the point there. But by the way, the Vikings actually didn't have horns on there.
Oh, there you go. You see, there you go. For a 10-year-old boy,
10-year-old
boy 50 years ago.
You proved the point there. You proved the point, which is every child, and I'm including boys and girls in this. Every child loves history, and I think they're tapped into that. Because a lot of history requires imagination. Lots of our kind of fictional stories are based upon ancient history. I mean, even in adulthood, Lord of the Rings, for example, is based upon Viking Danish mythology. So I mean, Star Wars, even in science fiction, it's based upon all of these myths and legends. And so, history is prime for children. And I would suggest, I'm making a bold statement here. I'll probably divide your audience with this. So I apologize, audience. I do apologize. But I would suggest that the history that these children are learning from the age of, from year 3 to year 6. So in that 3-year period, this is the best history these kids are ever going to learn, right? So I'm going to go through them. The Vikings, you've said. I mean, it's just brutal. The Anglo-Saxons, it is brutal. The ancient Egyptians, fascinating. Ancient Sumner. You've got the Maya dynasty. You've got the Romans. I mean, come on. I mean, you've got the ancient Greeks. These are massive, epic, like timelines. And I think we've got to do it justice. I think we've got to serve this history absolute justice. And like you as a 10-year-old boy seeing that Viking ship, it blew your mind. That was today, 50 years on, and that's half a century, right? You still remember it. And so history lends itself to so much stuff. It lends itself to literacy. It lends itself to creativity. So that's what we're all about. And you've just proved the point there. The point.
Well, it just, all of those things, whether it's the Vikings or the Romans, I mean, they still influence us today. And they still impact upon our lives today. So wherever you're listening to this podcast, think about how you teach your child or your pupils about history and how you can make them come alive. And it sounds like we've found a real treasure trove here in what Luke has been saying and sharing with us today. And maybe you should go and visit his website and find out more about it. Now, if people want to find out more about Inspire and Mosaic and all your artifacts, where's the best place for them to go, Luke?
The best place to go to our site, which is the Inspire site, is www.inspire.education. Really nice and easy. So www.inspire.education.
Inspire. Wonderful. I'm guessing that you're expecting for this to grow like flotsam, and you'll have other material as the future goes on.
Oh yeah. Releasing stuff all the time. So we're just working on early Islam as our next topic, and then we'll be working on ancient Sumner. The focus on Britain, we've got everything ready. So, and that's really important. It's so, for example, when we're looking at the Romans, when we're looking at the Vikings, we're looking at the Anglo-Saxons. When we're looking at the Stone Age, Iron Age, Bronze Age, it's its impact on Britain. And you've alluded to that. So, our language is based upon parts of Norse, parts of Anglo-Saxon, parts of Latin. It's an amalgamation of all these different tribes and civilizations who came to this country. And so that's what our kind of the bulk is. It's all of these civilizations and its impact on Britain. We obviously latch everything onto the national curriculum, but we've got the Maya, ancient Sumner, rainforest, volcanoes. So yeah, we're building and building all the time, and adding every term.
Brilliant. Sounds great. Now, one of the things that people are going to be thinking to themselves who are listening to this podcast is about money. And obviously, school budgets are tight, etc. But if a school is thinking about using Inspire, what sort of money is it cost per pupil, or is there a blanket cover?
I'm an ex-teacher, right? And quite a lot of us who began this are all ex-teachers, so we really know about budgets, and we really know about making sure that these schools have money to spend on other things. And so everything I've told you, so all of the Mosaic, all of the Inspire, for children, for teachers, for a whole school, starts at 400 quid, right? And all of our prices are on our website anyway, so it starts at 400 quid. And if you're in an academy or you work with those schools, we can even bring it really, much cheaper than that. So I'm hoping for any teacher listening who has a budget, and I'm hoping for what we've discussed, that is not a lot of money. And what I tend to do is, as well, it includes free training, and we always start off with an initial meeting, a bit like this, and it will be with, probably with me. And I'll be walking through, talking about the curriculum. So it's all very bespoke. And we work with the school. The school doesn't work with us. We work with the school.
Brilliant. Well, it's there you are, listeners. It just goes to show there's always that extra resource that you can find on Eddie's LaunchPads, and hopefully you found a real treasure trove today. If you're a subject leader and your responsibility is history or geography, here's something that you want to explore. If you've got a little budget, here's something that you can explore with Luke and see whether it can help you. Luke, thank you for your time today. As always, listeners, if you want to go and find out more, go into the text of this podcast. You'll find the link. You're just one click away from Luke and his amazing resources. Go on there and find them. But Luke, thank you. Long may your resources fly. And long may the work that you do bring fruit, and hopefully in 60 years' time there'll be a young, or maybe not so young, maybe an old man like me who will say, "Oh, I can remember 60 years ago holding on to an Inspire resource, an artifact, and I'll never forget that."
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks for your time today, Luke.
You're welcome. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
And so another great LaunchPad show comes to an end. But don't worry, Eddie and Captain Dave will be back next week for another exciting trip on their learning journey. Until next time, be kind, be respectful, and don't forget to dream, believe, and shine.